Good day, English students. I'm sorry I'm absent today. I'm with my family, and so I've made a video of what you need to learn today and how to do your lesson today. So first of all, please go and turn in your sentence composing lesson opening adjectives at the front of the room on the table, and Mrs. Baker is going to pick those up for me and put them on my desk. If you don't have it today, you can turn it in late tomorrow for points off. Go ahead and pause the recording right now so that you can go and turn that in. Okay, right now what I want you to do is to take a picture of the grammar practice, which is on the screen at the front of the room, and I want you to load it into Notability, into your grammar practice file. And you'll notice this sentence is a bit different. This does not have any correctly print or placed punctuation, and there are a lot of mistakes. So what I want you to do is I want you to correct this sentence, and then I want you to rewrite it correctly right below it. Okay, so correct the sentence and then rewrite it correctly. I will show you the answers, and we'll talk about this sentence tomorrow at the beginning of class. Okay, so right now pause the video and mark your editing marks and type your sentence or write your sentence right below it in a correct version. All right, thank you. Okay, now we're going to shift gears a bit, and you see before you a picture which represents the paragraphs in your important person paper that we will be writing today and next week. Today we're only going to focus upon the introduction paragraph, and so what I need you to do right now is to just listen and see how this whole paper is going to be put together, and then we're going to get busy writing. Okay, the first thing you'll notice is that the introduction paragraph goes from broad to specific, and the very last sentence in the introduction paragraph is the thesis. And then you have your two body paragraphs. We've already created the structure for these. We've already written the topic sentence and the concrete detail ideas. And later on, you'll add commentary when you're writing the actual paragraphs. And so you can see that this essay is going to be 4 paragraphs long. But today, let's just talk about the introduction paragraph. Okay, if you'll look on page number 3 of your important person paper packet, you will see first draft writing introduction paragraph options. Okay, and on this page I've given you 6 really creative ways to write an introduction paragraph. And you can choose to use one of these ways, or you could even combine a couple of these together to create your introduction paragraph. Now, what you will notice though is that at the end of each of these there's a sentence that is underlined. That sentence is the thesis. Notice on each of these it's the very last sentence. That thesis is the very last sentence of the introduction paragraph. Now what I want you to really note is that nothing I use in any of these introduction paragraphs will be used later in any part of my paper. So I don't want to hear in your introduction paragraph any of the stories you plan on telling in your paper as evidence, as your CD. So be really careful to avoid doing that. But right now what I'd like to do is to kind of go over each of these with you. So let's look at them together. Okay, the first thing you see before you now is the example called an anecdote. This is an introduction that tells a story. And notice it's not a story I'm going to tell actually in any of my body paragraphs. So let me read my example to you. When I was a little girl, I loved to get down the light green photo album and look at the black and white pictures of my very early years as a baby and toddler. There were pictures of my dad and sister and me, but interestingly, my mother was absent in most of the shots. And this is because she was the one capturing the moments. She was the photographer. She is the one who has been there with me and still loves me all the same. I love my mom very much, and she is an important part of my life. That last sentence is underlined because it's my thesis. Do you see how the anecdote goes from kind of like a broad story to a very specific person, which is my mom, and it's the thesis which has my opinion of her in it. So this is an example of an anecdote. Okay, this next one is an example introduction paragraph. And what I mean by example is I'm going to tell you an example of a mom, Okay, so like if you had a paper about a friend, you could write an example of a perfect friend, or an example of a perfect camp counselor, or an example of a perfect grandma. Whoever you're writing about, you could kind of write up an example of that person. So here's my example. A mom is a person who gives birth to children, who tenderly cares for and nurtures little ones, who makes endless meals, who washes countless dishes. She is the person who scrubs dirty children, who tends knee and elbow scrapes, who says the Mother's Day drawing is beautiful even though the shapes are unrecognizable. She is the one who would rather let all the hurts in the world enter her heart instead of falling upon her precious child. My mom, Veralyn Faye Ward, is that person to me. So you can see my last sentence is my thesis, and it goes kind of broad from an example of a mom to a very specific mom who is my mom. And you can see that I've kind of devised it that way. So this is a good one if you'd like to use it in your paper, an example type of an introduction paragraph. Okay, the next one is a startling fact. And I don't mean like startling like, scare you to death, but like it's kind of odd or even quirky. Kind of, oh, that's interesting type of fact. And so I'll read you this one. I would not sell my mom for $1 million. She has such hidden wonderful talents, like beating all the kids on the street at tetherball time after time and then rubbing it in, making delicious El Paso enchiladas, yipping and yelling at the neighborhood dogs like they understand her, and finding bargains at affordable stores. She is priceless, actually, which is why my mom is one of the most influential people in my life. Once again, notice you have the thesis there at the end, and it's gone from broad, from, crazy things my mom does, to specific, which is, why my mom is special to me. The next example is an unusual position, and this one's kind of like, oh, that's kind of a neat way to think about moms in general, and so I'm going to read you my example to kind of give you a different perspective of maybe what a mom would be like. Now, you could do the same thing with a friend or with, a coach you're writing about. But what I want to make sure you remember is you cannot include anything in your introduction paragraph that you're going to later include in your paper in one of your body paragraphs. So I had to be really careful. Here's my unusual position one. What if we got up hours before the rest of the family, made 3 meals and a few snacks in between, cleaned the dishes, cleaned the floors, cleaned the car, cleaned the dog, and cleaned dirty noses, taxied children all around town, bought all the groceries, helped with homework, helped with baths, helped with brushing teeth and tucking into bed? We would be exhausted and grumpy moms. I know I did not appreciate my mom enough, but I know that I certainly do love her. My mom is a fantastic role model and person. So you can see again my thesis there at the very end, and I was very careful not to include anything in my introduction paragraph that I'm going to later include in my body paragraphs. This next one is a quotation. Can you find a quote about maybe the type of person you're writing about, or just a quote about a friend in general that you might want to use in your introduction? Let me read you my example. Mildred B. Vermont once wrote that being a full-time mother is one of the highest salaried jobs in my field, since the payment is pure love. All the love that I could possibly give would never be enough to pay for the work that my mom did as I was growing up. My mom is definitely a very important person in my life. Now, this is a short introduction, which is fine. But I might even suggest you combine a quotation maybe with one of the other forms of introduction, like an anecdote, or maybe even the startling fact or the example one. So it's completely up to you how you construct your introduction paragraph. Notice the thesis, though, is always there at the end. Okay, the last type of introduction is called a background info, and I'll read you my example. Veralyn Faye Cochran was born in Butte, Montana, and grew up a tenacious little girl who often had to take care of herself since her mother was busy working the farm. She evolved much like a wildflower and was blessed to meet John Carroll Ward Jr. at a young age. She married this kind man and birthed, loved, and raised 3 daughters. I am the eldest of these daughters, and I know my mom, Veralyn Faye Ward, is an amazing person. So you can see here that my thesis is at the end. and I've given some good background information on my mom that I will not put in any part of my paper. I keep mentioning that to you because I'm smart enough that once you tell it to me in the introduction, I don't need to hear about it again in the body paragraphs or in the conclusion paragraphs. You have to be really careful, and you've got to have plenty of wonderful things to say about your person so that you're not, creating redundant writing. All right, now what I want you to do is to look at the next page because we're going to look at how to write your introduction. Okay, number 8, write your introduction paragraph, underline your thesis. Okay, now what I've done is I've written mine down there, and I've underlined my thesis in red. You don't have to type it. I typed mine because I just had to on this computer screen. But you can handwrite this and then underline your thesis in the same color. That's just fine. Once again, you need to choose one of the introduction types. You can't just decide, oh, I'm going to just, do what I want to do. You really do need to choose one of the introduction options. I've given you 6. Or you can do a combination. Like you can add the anecdote and the quote together, or the startling fact and the background information one together. So whatever you do, down there at the bottom of the page, it says what introduction option or a combination of options did you choose, and you have to write down which one you've chosen as you've written your paragraph. So please don't use any of your CDs in your introduction paragraph, and you can see I chose the one that was kind of a startling fact. And you can read over it if you need to. Otherwise, I want you to get busy. This is your only work today. You only have to write this introduction paragraph, and then I want you to stop. I don't want you to write any more of the essay yet. Tomorrow, you're going to sit down with me, and you're going to conference with me. You're going to read me your introduction paragraph, and I'm going to check it and talk about it with you and make sure it's interesting and make sure that it leads towards your thesis and that you've placed your thesis as the last sentence. And so you will need your earbuds again tomorrow because you're going to do another sentence composing exercise or lesson while I start conferencing with people. So be sure and bring this packet back tomorrow. It will become homework tonight if you do not finish in class right now. So you will have homework if you don't finish this introduction tonight. You'll need to do it, or today, you'll need to do it tonight. Now remember, your other homework tonight is to study for the roots quiz. So I think right now is a good time to write this introduction paragraph so you don't have double homework tonight. So you better get busy, and I will talk to you tomorrow during conferencing. Thanks. Bye-bye.